Hi there. Welcome to Retirement Your Way. I am Debbi Marcum, the president of Retirement Solutions Group, and I'd love to welcome my lovely co-host Jaclyn. How are you doing, girl?
Oh, I'm so good. I mean, it's raining here today, but I was
Ooh.
just saying that it's like a pretty rain, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
it's not common that you can get a pretty rain of,
Yeah.
vertical raindrops. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise it's,
Yes. Hurt.
horizontal and yeah, it's not fun. So it's a pretty rain and I will take it
Good.
because that means spring and birds and it's gorgeous. So I
Yeah.
will take it. How about you?
I'm doing really well. We tend to sit out on our screen porch fairly often in the spring here, and yeah, how Facebook comes up with memories. And so this weekend, and I was sitting there going, "These are the loudest birds I've ever heard in my life." And Facebook memory popped up about 30 minutes later. A year ago, I had said exactly the same
Same thing? Oh,
For
wow.
some reason, April just brings around very loud birds in the woods back behind us, but
Mhm.
they're beautiful.
But it's so exciting. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, like, people complain about the rain, which I get. I mean, I'm not a
we need
fan of
it.
rain either, but the spring and the knowing that
Mhm.
we're gonna get beautiful weather and the green,
Yes.
I will take.
Yeah, yeah. We were in desperate need of rain, so I was kinda happy to have it this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, that I think that makes me sound old, saying, "Oh,
Yes.
we needed rain. We needed rain."
Just wait,
That's
you're
like
going
what
to be quoting your parents much more often as you get older. Although I've made it when you start quoting me.
Yes, yes. Well, I've already started, so we'll see how that goes, Debbie.
Oh, no.
Uh, well, Debbie, I am excited because we are doing a part 3 to our, Fearless Finances for Women series. So let's kind of talk about an overview of what we're going to be discussing today, Debbie.
Great. Today, I thought we would talk about masterful mimicry.
Huh? Wait, wait, wait. Can say that one more time.
Masterful mimicry.
Okay. And Debbie, what does that mean?
Well, first, let me ask you something. If you see someone who does just a beautiful job of manicuring their yard, or they do a
Mhm.
great job of applying makeup, don't you want to
Yes.
go to them and ask them, okay, give me your best tips because this
Yes.
is great. If I'm going to mimic someone, if I'm going to copy someone, you want to go to someone who actually does an outstanding job at that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will kind of give a hint as to masterful mimicry in retirements.
I'm excited for that. Yeah. So if you see someone doing a great job, you're gonna ask for the secrets. You're gonna try
I
to,
agree.
you know, do that. And why wouldn't you when it comes to retirement? That's one of the
I
most
agree.
important things.
I agree. So I have actually done a ton of research and I've also questioned quite a few people lately. And I've gone to the wealthiest that I know to ask, what did you do to succeed? Too often we just assume that they're wealthy because they were born into it.
Mhm.
And that's not always the case.
Mhm.
So I especially want to talk to the people that, that mastered how did you make a good living, and manage to save that for retirement. So that's where the mimicry comes in.
I'm excited for this. And I love that
Good.
you mentioned, when we see that people are wealthy and we kind of just assume. And
Yep.
more often than not, the wealthiest people come from poverty, come
Yes.
from below means. And it's so interesting that yet we know that. I mean, we're in this field, we know that, but yet
Yes.
I still assume, I'm not going to lie.
Mhm. Well, we're
Um,
human.
yeah, exactly. So where are we going to start with this topic?
Well, I first want to, I mean, as we've discussed over the past few weeks, women are at greater risk of being disadvantaged in
Mhm.
retirement,
Mhm.
either because they've made less money, they're single, either because they've always been single, they're divorced or widowed. There's often been work disruptions. They've stopped to take care of children. They may have, been in jobs that paid less than men. So women typically are at a disadvantage as a whole in retirement. Um, and so there have been studies done that said about 56% of women in retirement are concerned that they will not have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. I mean, that's a little
Wow.
over half of women. That is I know that has to disrupt their sleep. I mean, 'cause so if I'm worried about something, I don't sleep as well. So, that's just a worry that they have on their shoulders. And so hopefully we can give some tips to alleviate some of that stress. Now, these are also concerns that men have. However, you know, women face the obstacles that men don't. So we're still going to kind of focus on women, but men can take this advice as well.
Yes, yes. Well, and for our listeners and viewers, I mean, this series is focused on women, which is why we
Yes.
want to bring these topics up because these are also topics that Debbie, you and I both experience. And we're
Yes.
coming from our experience, our firsthand experience when it comes to being a woman in finance. And
Yes.
so, yes, it's applicable to whoever, and it
Mhm.
will be applicable to you eventually. But it's we just like to talk about women.
Well, especially since, I think I mentioned last week, husbands have actually brought it up because their concerns
Ah,
are that their wives are taken care of if they die first. And
mhm.
statistically, women outlive men. We outnumber the men in retirement. So I think it would be foolish of us to not focus on providing that assistance, even if
Yes.
they are still
Well,
happily
and
married
I just
or,
wanna mention one thing, and for our listeners and viewers, please comment on this because
yes,
I wanna know, but it's a fact that couples argue about who's going to die first because nobody
yes,
wants to outlive their significant other.
that's right.
So
We need to do a poll.
yes, yes. So if that happens in your household, please comment and tell us because I think
Please do.
it's more common than not.
Yeah. Jacqueline and I don't want to think we're the only ones that have this argument with our loved ones.
Exactly.
We have
Uh,
almost gotten into a knockdown drag out fight. No, no, I'm going first.
yes. Yep, absolutely. Well, I am excited for this because I think that out of the 3, the last 2 episodes that we've done in the series,
Mhm.
we've kind of broken it down, but I think this episode sounds more positive. If we
I agree.
see positivity, we want to follow with that positivity.
Yes.
And so maybe let's start with, what's tip number 1?
Tip number 1 is actually one that I give young people when I meet with them as well, and that is pay yourself first. You need to prioritize your savings before your spending. But along with that, ideally, you need to do it through automation because automation overrides your willpower doesn't come into play. If you have that set up to automatically be taken care of, it establishes, a routine. It establishes repeatable behaviors. And it can often benefit you financially to do that. For example, when we financed, I think we financed a boat several years ago. And as you know, as we were doing this, she said, if you will go ahead and automate the payment, I can give you a better interest rate. So having it automated saved us additional money.
Mhm,
And then, of course, paying that off early also did the same thing. But
mhm.
I think if you pay yourself first, automate it if possible, but it puts the priority on saving versus spending. And I think that is regardless of your age, but
Mhm.
especially as you're preparing for retirement.
Yeah.
Especially if you do not have a career that is going to provide a pension. It's essential that you do that. I mean, I don't know how you would make it to retirement if you did not do that. If you have a career that doesn't automatically lend itself to a pension, especially since, we don't know what is going to happen to Social Security down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want anyone to rely on that, entirely.
Yeah.
So pay yourself first.
Well, and that's a great tip to start with. And I also think, Debbie, it takes out the excuses. I mean, how
Yes.
many times do you come up with excuses for yourself saying, "Oh,
Mhm.
that I can wait until next month. I can,
Yes,
my future can wait. It's not a big deal." But
that's right.
with automation, it takes out the second guessing, the excuses, which are pretty often the case. So that's a great tip. What is another tip that you have? Tip number 2.
Uh, Avoid letting cash just sit idly by,
Mm.
because it creates long-term issues and, inflation erodes on that value. So
Uh-huh.
if you're just sitting there letting it, not work for you, that's not using it to its best value. I met with the son of some dear clients last week and helping him prepare and asking him, where do you see, what do you want in 10 years? Yeah.
Mhm.
And he'd love to buy a house at some point.
Mhm.
And right now that cash is tending to burn a hole in his pocket. And I said, okay, we're going to do a few things. First of all, I want you to take 1 month and you write down everything, write down where every penny is going.
Mhm.
Because if you see where it's going, you suddenly see, good grief, how much money am I spending on, fast food? How much am I spending on a video game? You start to see where it is going. But then I said, and you need to start investing for short term. So, for him, a MICA, multi-year annuity is a great avenue to use to earn money. Put it aside for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years. Let that grow because it's not working for him to have it sitting in a checking account. And he didn't want to, he wasn't real comfortable with the stock market. So investing it in a smart way for those short terms and building it up over that 10-year period is going to get to where he'll be ready to buy a car or a house. So, and I talked to her, I
Yeah.
said, instead of getting a luxury car before you get your house might not be the best avenue. So sometimes you put off those dreams and goals. You kind of have to prioritize what your goals are. And if buying a home is a priority, then you need to have a roadmap to help get there. So, you know, every dollar should have a purpose,
Yeah.
either growth, income, or protection.
Mhm. Yeah, Debbie, I love that you mentioned this one because I think it's a more common thing now that everyone's kind of retreating and wanting to go completely cash, have everything in cash. And they think that pulling out of the markets and pulling out of all these investments and everything will be better for them because, your money's in your hand. But that's not reality. I mean, you're still going to be fighting inflation. You're still going to be fighting these 10 possible 10% interest rates, and growth, and that's a lot to be missing out on.
It
And
is.
so I'm so glad that you mentioned the cash part because having it invested, having it do the work for you is so critical.
I agree. I mean, why not have your money work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy thing if it is set up correctly and if you have that roadmap mapped out
Mhm.
for you. If
Mhm.
you've made plans, it doesn't happen accidentally. I I don't know anyone who accidentally becomes wealthy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I like
maybe
that.
maybe the Beverly Hillbillies, when they discovered oil, but how often does that realistically happen? So
Yes.
people do not accidentally become wealthy. It has to be done
Mhm.
intentionally.
Mhm. Yeah,
You can
or
quote me on that one.
yeah, I will, and I'll add another quote. Yep. Just as we start the podcast today, I'm already quoting Debbie. Yep, I sure am. Oh. Well, these are
No.
great tips so far. So we
Yeah.
got tip number 1 is pay
Mhm.
yourself first, and tip
Yes,
number 2 is, stay invested, beat inflation, and continue that growth. And
that's
Debbie,
right.
what would tip number 3 be?
Don't I mean, you need to live below your means.
Mhm.
Yeah. Several years ago, it's probably been 25 years ago, I went back to where I went to high school and I saw these huge homes. I mean, enormous homes. And these were people that I'd gone to high school with. And I thought, whew, what kind of career do they have that they can afford, these multi-million dollar homes?
Mhm.
And just kind of shared that with a friend. And she said, yeah, but you should be in the house. And I said, why? She said, no furniture. They have bought this huge home, but they're clearly living above their means because they can't afford to
Yes.
even furnish it. And so they're not living below their means. So sometimes we see these huge things that say, "Oh, okay, this is what I want." But if you can't actually afford it, just say no.
Mhm.
Just walk away from that. I can't imagine that made them any happier. The stress of not being able to pay my bills would certainly have taken its toll on my health. I can't imagine having a multi-million dollar home sitting there with no couch. So I
Mhm.
think you need to understand what your means are and live within that.
Mhm. That's a
If you're
great
not
point.
living within that, before retirement, there is no way you're going to be able to afford retirement.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Debbie, because, I think about, like, you just brought up a luxury car, right? I mean, how many people go out and they do get car loans and they
Mhm.
do buy their dream car, and then it turns out that they can't afford it, or they're spending
Yes.
upwards of, maybe $800, $1,000 a month on a vehicle when
Yeah.
that same another low priced vehicle will get you the same place, won't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it'll do the same job. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think the debt in our country is at an all-time high,
Mhm.
and people are living off of debt right now.
Yes, they are.
Mhm.
Yes, they are. It nah, I have a very nice car, and I've actually had a gentleman say, "Okay, I don't know, you drive a very nice car." I said, "Well, do you actually want a financial advisor who can't afford a nice car?" But I certainly did not start off with having, the very nice car. I drove very inexpensive cars and drove it for 20 years. So I worked my way up to being able to afford it,
Yeah.
which is the entire purpose of, making sure that you live within your means.
Yes.
And yeah, so I'm not against having nice cars, but you need to do it within your
Yes.
budget and
Okay.
what you can actually afford.
I need to comment on this too because I drive a really nice car,
Yeah.
and I will say I don't have any loans on it. I've never taken out a car
Yay.
loan, and, but that's my one thing. That is
Hmm.
my one thing that I will spend money on. So, I'm still
Yeah.
living below my means. It's just
Yes.
that's my one thing that I will,
You
pay
prioritized
higher
it.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which I think
exactly.
you need to do. You need to prioritize. I mean,
Mhm.
your money needs a purpose. So you establish where that money is going to fall. You know, is it going to be growth, income, or protection?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'll quote
So
you on that one too, Debbie.
I think I
Growth,
stole that one
income,
from
or
someone.
protection. Well, do you have any other
But
tips for our listeners and viewers today?
I have a couple of them. First one is real easy, and that is when you're first starting retirement. I see this far too often. I also see this after divorce and after someone becomes a widower or widower,
Oh.
and they overspend too early in retirement, or they overspend after
Oh.
becoming a widow, or they overspend after, going through a divorce. I see that so
Mhm.
often. And sometimes it's because the emotions kick in. And so you're doing that. I mean, too many people spend because of emotion. Yeah. Like if they overeat, they overspend, sometimes. So starting off retirement and overspending at first, I think leads to stress later on.
Mhm.
And especially since we are living longer. So if you retire at 65 and you have a family history of 25 or 30 years, is that money going to last you 25 or 30 years? You need to look at statistically, this money needs to, outlast me. Um, I think you need to ditch costly debt. Look at that credit card debt. Look to see, is this where too much of my money is going off? So pay those credit cards off. Paying 29%. I mean, that's just insane. Yeah, to
Ooh,
continue to pay those. Uh, So I think you need to ditch, costly debt. Um, I mean,
prioritize. Prioritize your
yeah,
money.
you need to prioritize. It may mean that you have to give up, the weekly manicures, or you may have to give something up. I don't
Yeah.
want retirement though for your lifestyle to change that drastically though. Yeah, that would be tough to being used to living a certain way and then suddenly realize I'm going to run out of money, so I have to give up so much of what I really loved doing in life. I'd like for people to maintain their lifestyle. So I think that's especially important of why you need a roadmap. I think you need to plan intentionally, which is why it is wise to get a financial advisor because they are going to help you review your roadmap. They're going to, find those hidden costs that you may not realize that you're paying. I mean, the other day I sat down with someone and I said, let's just pull up your phone. I want to see how many subscriptions you're actually paying for. 32 subscriptions.
Okay, so
She
I
thought she
just
had 1.
yeah. I do wanna mention,
Yeah.
for our listeners and viewers yet again, comment down below how many subscriptions you think you have,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
then
and then how many
comment
you have.
and say yes. Because
Mhm.
I mean, I for one, I think I probably have 5. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
You probably have more. I mean, how many times do we go on Amazon, order something, you get it cheaper if you automatically subscribe to it, and then 3 months from now, you suddenly get something, "I I don't remember ordering that." Well, it's because you set it up for automatic subscription. So, going in and checking those simple things can often save you vast amounts of dollars.
mhm.
And, yeah, so that's budgeting with a purpose and intentionally. Have ongoing reviews. I mean, it is essential to have ongoing. You're not going to go put, change the oil in your car and then just never have to worry about it again. You have to continually take that car back for tune-ups. Your finances are the same way, which is why a good financial advisor is there to help you with that. That's why it's important to have those annual reviews. That ensures that your money is going to work harder for you and it's going to reduce stress and that uncertainty.
Okay.
Because to really enjoy retirement, you need to remove those unnecessary weights that you have on your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and move I mean, we just talked about it in tip number 2, I think, about just automation and, use it to towards a strategy and,
Hmm.
have a strategy beyond with the automation, but then we worry about the subscriptions that are just
Yeah.
automatically automation, and we have no idea what we're spending our money on. And,
Yes.
we want you to get through retirement, enjoy your money, enjoy, the work that you've worked so hard for, the money, and enjoy it. So these tips are just small little things that you can focus on today. Start small. Start with the baby steps, and then as you get going, you'll be adding another one. Maybe start
That's
with
right.
tip number 1 and then a month later, okay, we're going to add tip number
We're going to
2.
add one.
Yeah, we're gonna add the tips as we go,
Hmm.
but just starting somewhere and working with a financial advisor who will have your back, who will hold you accountable, because you need a coach. You need someone
I
to
think
be
so.
there. So, Debbie, how can our listeners and viewers get a hold of you?
The easiest thing to do is to call my office at 866-247-5695, and Andy would love to set up a visit with you. But you can also check out our Facebook page, our website. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, but of course, Jacqueline and I prefer YouTube and actually get to. I mean, who would not want to look at that lovely face of Jacqueline's?
Yours too, yours too. Uh, I mean, we have so much fun on this podcast. And again, we love to hear from you. So if you're
Yes, we
listening
do.
and, you're thinking, wow, maybe how many subscriptions do I have? I got to check. Or, hey, husband, wife, do we argue about who's going to die first? Ask those questions and let us know because sometimes Debbie and I want to win an argument. So just prove us who's going to win.
You can also brag about an accomplishment. We'd love to hear of, some bragging moments.
Yes,
We'll help
absolutely.
celebrate with you.
Yes, and we want to hear about what you wanna learn about too. We're in this Fearless Finances for Women series, but we're open to another series afterwards, so let us know
Yes.
what you wanna hear about. Well, thank you, Debbie. This has been a fantastic
Thank you.
episode, and we'll see you guys next time. So that does it for this episode of Retirement Your Way with our host, Debbie Marcum.